All right, story time from the sauna again. I'm sweating. Been in 25 minutes so far. Definitely feeling it. But this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. Look, you got to practice suffering. That's all there is to it. There's always going to be suffering in life. Whether it is simple stuff like just waiting for a phone call from somebody, or waiting for the weekend to come around, or complex things like waiting for the results of the interview that you just did, or a pregnancy test, or a biopsy scan on something that's a health concern. Life is full of things that are difficult and require you to be able to deal effectively with suffering. Everybody kind of does it differently. Choose your own brand of coping skills. But for me, practicing suffering is a big part of it for sure. And I was doing some other videos today, and I mentioned that I have caught passes from an NFL quarterback and that I've run 40-yard dashes against some NFL football players and some Olympians and stuff like that. And that's true. It's been a long time, but one of the stories that sticks out in my mind the most from those days was we did a field-based exercise. It was me, two college kids, and several NFL players who were either training for the NFL Combine or guys that were in the off-season who were there to work out with the trainer that I also used. Long story short, we went out to the field out back, the football field, and 5 of us went one direction, 5 of us went the other. We stood 80 yards apart. There was a sled, and you put a harness on to pull the small sled that had 135 pounds on it. That's 3 45-pound weights. At the time, I weighed 135 pounds. So I literally was dragging my body weight behind me when I put the harness on. I went last in my group. These big, strong NFL guys put the harness on, took off, ran it 80 yards, dropped the harness. The next guy picked it up, ran it back. So I'm watching them do it back and forth. My turn comes. I put the harness on. I didn't realize that if I put a little bit of slack in the line, that I would come to a screeching halt. So I looked like the dog running towards the end of a leash. I had a bunch of slack in the line thinking I could get a head start and yank it with me. And the weight was heavy enough that it literally pulled me backwards and knocked me on my ass. Everybody started laughing. I wasn't having that. I got up, I took off, I finished the 80 yards, took off the harness, and thought, oh my God, was that hard? I don't know if we're supposed to do 8 of these. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do another one, let alone 7 more. So I'm waiting my turn. The guys go through their rotations. I put on the harness. I run down. I did it without falling that time, even though I'm wearing running shoes instead of cleats or spikes like the football players were. I get to the end. I drop the harness, and I am exhausted. My butt is on fire. My hamstrings are burning. I am breathing so hard. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to make it. Then I noticed 2 of the guys walked away. 2 of them quit. I'm talking about multi-million-dollar athletes preparing for their next season, decided this was too hard and they're going to stop. But I didn't. I did my next turn. Only the problem was now it came up faster because there's less guys on my side. So I had less rest in between. So I did my 3rd rep, and I went down to the other end of the field and took the harness off. 2 more guys walked away. Now I'm up again. I'm still breathing hard from the last one. I haven't recovered, and it's my turn already. I put the harness on. I take off. I get about 20 yards from the finish line, and I start to stumble, and I fall. And instead of giving up, I effing crawled across the finish line. Hands and knees, digging into the dirt, literally grass under my fingernails, clawing and scratching to get that goddamn thing across the line. And I did it. And the instructor who was working with us came over, and I took the harness off and I rolled over on my back, and I'm just gasping for breath, sweat pouring out of me, on the verge of cramping. And he looks down at me and he winks And he says, all right, everybody, we're done. Shank's going to kill himself out here if we don't call an end to this exercise. Let's go inside. That, my friends, is suffering. Voluntarily, I gave it everything I had. And to some degree, I may have actually worked until I passed out. Literally, physically passed out on that field before I gave up. Multi-million-dollar athletes. I don't want to say names, but they're people you would know if you were a football fan for sure. Quit before I did. I'm not a million-dollar athlete. And in fact, I was done with my pro racquetball career at that point. I did it because I wanted to. I did it to prove to myself what I could handle. And from that day forward, not one of those guys ever questioned why I was there working out with them. I showed that I had the heart and the fight in me, regardless of weighing 135 pounds at the time. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. And I proved it that day. And anytime I'm struggling with something, I go back to that moment and remember what I did and know whatever it takes, I can do it again. Moral of the story, practice suffering, because you can always go back to those moments and remember what you accomplished and how you got through it and draw from that strength and do it again. Get to work.